Hey guys, welcome to this session by Intellipaat. In this session, we're going to look into MySQL interview questions. So we'll be looking into three different parts: the basic questions, intermediate, and the advanced questions, so that you can understand how these questions are framed in an interview. So before moving on with this session, please subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our upcoming videos, and also leave a like if you enjoy our content. Now let's begin with this session.
Beginning with the beginner level questions. Question number one, compare MySQL with SQL Server. Now this SQL Server is Microsoft's SQL Server. So obviously MySQL was developed by Oracle while the SQL Server was developed by Microsoft. MySQL was programmed in C and C++, while the SQL Server was programmed in mainly C++, except some parts which were programmed in C. MySQL supports many platforms. You can install a MySQL server on many platforms, Linux, Mac, and Windows, while the SQL Server supports only Linux and Windows. It does not support Mac. MySQL has a complex syntax, while the SQL Server has a super easy to use syntax. Moving on to question number two. What is an SQL Server? Now, SQL Server is a database management system which was designed by Microsoft. DBMSs are computer software applications which have the ability to interact with various users, various applications that are using that server as a database implement, and various databases as well. So you can interact with the data that is actually present in the database. The objective of an SQL server is to serve as a service which captures data when it is created. It is also to help us with querying that data, the creation of new tables in that database, to update that data, and to be able to administer the entire database with the help of the administrative services that the SQL Server provides to us. Moving on to question number three. What are the features of MySQL? So MySQL provides cross-platform support and a wide range of interfaces for application programming, and has many stored procedures like triggers and cursors to help us in managing the database. So these are the primary features of MySQL. How do you check your SQL version? So if you're using the command line on a Linux-based system, you can type in mysql-v. If you're using Windows, you can simply open up your SQL server and write in the query show variables like and given the version clause, and you'll get the version. Moving on to question number five. What is the traditional network library for a system? So Windows or POSIX systems use pipes to provide ways of inter-process communication to connect different processes that are running at the same time on the same machine. What the traditional network library does for us is that it eliminates the necessity of using the system's network stack, and data can be sent without affecting the performance of the system. So servers essentially set up named pipes to listen to requests, and the client just needs to know the name of that specific pipe to send data or send requests to the server. So this would help us in preventing the performance degradation that would have happened if we were using the traditional network stack. Moving on to question number six. What is the default port for the MySQL server? The default port is 3306, and the other standard default port is 1433 in the TCP IP protocol for the SQL server. Question number seven. What do DDL, DML, and DCL stand for? Now, there are three querying languages in MySQL that you can use. First is the DDL, or the data definition language. So as the name suggests, it is to define data. So any querying statement that has to do with create refers to data definition, because you are creating a table. Now, the second is DML, which is data manipulation language. So anything that you use to basically manipulate data that is present in your database is DML. So the statements such as select, insert are part of DML, and DCL finally is the data control language. So in order to control the access of data, you can use grant or revoke. So these are the things that you can use in MySQL for various sorts of data management. Moving on to question number eight. What is a join in MySQL? Now, this is one of the most frequently asked questions in interviews, and you need to know the different types of joins that exist in specific. So, by definition, joins are used to query data from two or more tables together. So the query is made using the relationship between certain columns that are existing in these tables. There are four types of joins in MySQL that can be based on this. So in an inner join, you'll basically include only the common values in both of the tables. In a left join, you'll include all of the values on the left hand side table and only the common values between the two tables. The right join would include the exact opposite of a left join, and the full outer join would include all of the values from both of the tables. What are the common MySQL functions? The common SQL functions are as follows. The first is NOWO, the function for returning the current date and time as a singular value. The current date is returned by the CURRDATEO function. If you want to join two string values together, you can use the concatenation function, which is the concat function. And if you want to find out the date difference between two date values, you can use the datediff function, where x would be the preliminary date and y would be the final date. And between these two dates, you'll get the difference. Moving on to question number 10. What is the difference between char and varchar? So these are the two data types that can be used to represent alphabets and strings in SQL tables. So when a table is created, char is used to define the fixed length of the table and columns. The length value could be in the range of 1 to 255. The varchar command, on the other hand, is used to adjust the column and table lengths as required. So when you're using char, you get a fixed length. When you're using varchar, it depends on the value that you're inputting in the table. Moving on to question number 11. What are heap tables? And this is an intermediate level question. So we're in the intermediate phase now. Heap tables are in-memory tables for high-speed temporary storage, but text and blob fields are not allowed within them. They also do not support auto-increment. So essentially, when you're running an SQL instance, any table that you're creating in the RAM for faster access with the CPU, that is a heap table. Moving on to question number 12. What is the syntax for concatenating tables in MySQL? The syntax for concatenating two tables in MySQL would include the table names present in the concat function. So essentially, when you use the concat function and you enter various table names together, you would be joining those tables together. What is the limit of indexed columns that can be created for a table? The maximum limit of indexed columns that can be created for any particular table in MySQL is 16. Moving on to question number 14. What are the different types of strings used in database columns in MySQL? So when you're trying to store string values in your SQL table, what are the different types of strings that you can use? So the different types of strings that can be used for database columns are set, blob, varchar, text, enum, and char. We already discussed the difference between varchar and char. It is most commonly recommended to use varchar for general purposes because the size is adjustable, and even if the string is high in length, the varchar can adjust its size accordingly. Moving on to question number 15. How to add columns in MySQL. So say for instance you have an existing table in your MySQL database and you need to add more columns to it. So a column is essentially a series of cells in a table that stores one value for each row in a table. We can add columns using the alter table statement, which goes like the following. So you will write alter table and the table name, and then you'll write add column and you'll write the column name that you're supposed to add and the column definition. And then you would add the first or after existing column to basically specify its position among the other columns that are already present in the table. So moving on to the advanced questions. How do you change the root password of the SQL server if it is lost? So in such cases, when the password is lost, the user should start the database with skip grants table and then change the password. Thereafter, with the new password, the user should restart the database in normal mode. So essentially, if you lose the password, you will use the skip grants table to gain access to create a new password so that you can log in with that again. How to resolve the problem of the data disk being full? So if the data disk is full and overloaded, the way out is to create and soft link and move the .frm and the .idb files into that linked location. So wherever you have space, you'll create a soft link to that and move these files over to that place. so that that space can be started to be used as the new storage location.
Okay guys, a quick info. If you're looking for an end-to-end database or SQL training, we at Intellipaat are providing you complete end-to-end training on MS SQL and also other database tools. So you can go ahead and check out them in the description box below. Now let's continue with this session.
Moving on to question number 18. What is the difference between the delete table and the truncate table commands in MySQL? So basically the delete table is a logged operation and every row deleted is logged. Therefore the process is usually slow. While the truncate table also deletes rows in a table, but it will not log any of the rows that are deleted. Obviously, the truncate table is a faster process when compared to the delete table. The truncate table can be rolled back and is functionally similar to the delete statement without a where clause. So the basic difference between the delete table command and the truncate table command is that you can specify a where clause in the delete table command so that it only deletes the rows where the where clause is being satisfied, whereas when you're using the truncate table command, you can do away with the entire table in one command. It obviously depends on your use case. If a table is no longer required, then you would obviously use the truncate table command. Whereas if you want to delete only specific rows from a particular table, you would use the delete table command. Question number 19. What is the use of enum in MySQL? The use of enum essentially would limit the values that can go into a table. For instance, a user can create a table giving specific month values and other month values could not be entered into that table. So this is to ensure data organization. Say for instance, I'm creating a data table for the month of September. If somebody wants to enter data from the month of November in that table, it will automatically be rejected. So that is the main target of using enum. Question number 20. How to define the testing of network layers in MySQL? For this, it is necessary to review the layered architecture and determine hardware and software configuration dependencies with respect to the application that we're putting to test. Question number 21. Now, this is also a very frequently asked question in interviews. What is the difference between the primary key and the unique key? So both of these keys are used to enforce the uniqueness of the columns that have been defined. The primary key would create a clustered index, while the unique key would create a non-clustered index on the column. The primary key does not allow the null value, while the unique key does. So in the given table on the left hand side, we can see the primary key. This is the employee ID, which is 1, 2, and 3. All these values have to be unique and have to correspond to a particular employee name, right? While we can see the unique key being a combination of two columns, namely the employee license and the employee passport. Now, as we discussed earlier, any of these columns could have a null value and it would not matter because the unique key is essentially representing a characteristic of the employee name, while the employee ID is representing the unique position that that employee occupies in the organization. In the case of the employee license and the employee passport both being null, we can still identify that employee with the employee ID. Moving on to question number 22. How can one restart the SQL server in the single user or the minimal configuration modes? The command line sqlserver.exe used with the -m will restart the SQL server in the single user mode, while if you use the -f, it will restart it in the minimal configuration mode. Question number 23. What are the differences between a primary key and a foreign key? So this is also a frequently asked question. So a primary key helps in the unique identification of data in the database, and the foreign key is used to link data between two tables. The primary key can only be one column for a particular table. The foreign key, we can have multiple columns of foreign keys in a particular table. Primary key attributes cannot have duplicate values in a table, while duplicate values are acceptable for a foreign key. Null values are not acceptable in primary key as we discussed earlier, while null values are acceptable in the foreign key column. We can define primary key constraints for temporarily created tables. We cannot do that for foreign keys. The primary key index is automatically created. while in the foreign key, the index is not automatically created. Question number 24. What is the timestamp data type? The timestamp data type in an SQL server helps in row versioning. Row versioning is a type of concurrency that allows retaining the value until it is committed to the database. It shows the instant time of any event. So say for instance, you're creating a social media account. The moment you hit create account, it gets registered inside the database, inside a data table. And if that data table has a timestamp data type column associated to it, it will record the exact time you created your account. So it shows the instant time of any event. It consists of both the date and time of that event down to the second. Also, timestamp helps in backing up data during the failure of a transaction. So while we insert, update, or delete a record, the time data will be inserted automatically. And we can also see the format of the timestamp over here, which is the YYYYMMDD, which year, month, and date, and the hour, minute, and second. And the last question, what is the difference between the data type of blob and text? Blobs are binary large objects holding huge data. There are 4 types of blobs: the tiny blob, medium blob, and long blob. So all of the blob sizes depend on the size of the data that you want to input. Text is a case sensitive blob. So 4 types of text exist. There is text, there is tiny text, there is medium text, and there is long text. Each of these is used to hold data depending on their size. While blob is not case sensitive, text is case sensitive.
Okay guys, a quick info. If you're looking for an end-to-end database or SQL training, we at Intellipaat are providing you complete end-to-end training on MS SQL and also other database tools, so you can go ahead and check out them in the description box below. Okay guys, we've come to the end of this video. I hope this video was informative and helpful for you. Also guys, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't done yet for our upcoming videos, and also leave a like to our videos if you really enjoy our content. Thank you. Meet you in another session.